Well, good evening, everybody. This is Congressman Lee Zeldin. Thank you all for joining my telephone town hall tonight. Throughout this telephone town hall, you'll be able to ask me questions directly. If you have a question, you can press *3 at any time. For years, telephone town halls have allowed me to productively reach the maximum amount of constituents interested in constructive dialogue. This is a modern way to bring a town hall directly to your home. Tonight, we'll focus on some federal issues which matter most to you and my work in Congress. Again, if you are just joining us and have a question to ask, you can press *3 at any time. In Congress, I've been working to advance my New Era of American Strength agenda. It focuses on protecting America's security at home and abroad, helping grow our economy and create more good-paying jobs, supporting our veterans and first responders, improving the quality of education, repairing our nation's infrastructure, improving health care in America, and safeguarding our environment. With the new year, new president, new Congress, there are many opportunities to advance legislation and other initiatives to improve the direction of our country. I firmly believe that keeping Americans safe, secure, and free must always be our first priority. We need to pursue a stronger, more consistent foreign policy which strengthens our relationships with our allies and treats our adversaries as our adversaries. Hopefully, we'll have an opportunity tonight to discuss this in more detail. As part of this effort, I reintroduced my Counterterrorism Screening and Assistance Act, or H.R. 1196, to establish a plan to close security gaps that currently exist abroad that allow terrorists and foreign fighters to travel internationally. For everyone just joining the call, if you have a question to ask during tonight's telephone town hall, press *3. We must also ensure that we're supporting our veterans and first responders, and that should remain a high priority. These brave men and women who willingly and selflessly put their lives on the line while defending us deserve nothing but the highest quality of life and care. I have reintroduced 4 of my bills from the 114th Congress to support veterans and help them receive the care and benefits they deserve. And we'll be working hard to again pass these bills in the House and hopefully get them passed into law. I will also be working to help grow our economy and create more good-paying private sector jobs. We must reform and consolidate our broken tax code to benefit the American economy and the American worker. Improving health care in America is also a top concern. I support repealing and replacing the ACA with a new reality that will work better and make health care more affordable while continuing to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions and to allow children to continue to stay on their parents' policy. It's also essential that we preserve and protect seniors' access to Medicare to ensure that benefits are not cut. Seniors receive the benefits and care that they need and have earned. Again, everyone just joining the call, if you press *3, and if you want to ask a question, you can do so at any time. Additionally, safeguarding our environment is so important to our life, culture, and economy. Every American should have access to clean air and clean water, and we must protect and preserve our abundance of natural resources. These are just some of the many issues I'm looking forward to discussing with all of you tonight. Thank you again for joining me tonight for this telephone town hall from the comfort of your own home. If you are just joining us and have a question to ask, you can press *3 at any time to ask a question. If you are joining our telephone town hall online, please submit all of your questions using the online interface at any time. You are also able to take part in our survey questions. If we are unable to get to your question, you'll be able to leave a message at the end of this telephone town hall. I look forward to speaking with all of you throughout this hour. And now we'll start with our first caller of the night. Russ?
Hello?
Hello, is this Russ?
No, this is Melody, his wife.
Melody?
I didn't
What's
know.
What's your question?
My question is, As far as I know, it's coming before the Supreme Court, the thing about the transgender bathrooms.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Well, the main issue that's been in the news right now, the discussion has been over an announcement that was made in the last day or two from the administration. The last administration, they had sent a letter out from the administration to schools all around the country regarding transgender bathrooms, and one of the most controversial elements of it was that it was threatening the loss of federal funding if schools around the country weren't brought into compliance with providing access bathrooms for individuals whose internal sense of gender may be different than their physical makeup. And then the administration, over the course of the last day or two, both the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, and the Department of Education, the Secretary of Education, issued guidance reversing the president's, the former president's directive. So that's a little bit of background of what's been going on. And what's your question?
My confusion about it is if they were to make a separate transgender bathroom, which I don't agree with, transgender is on both sides of the sex. In other words, you would have boys and girls going into the same bathroom, and if they were to put that through, then they should just take gender off bathrooms. And I know as a parent I wouldn't agree to it myself, but it would be the same thing.
Yeah, and it's certainly a difficult, sensitive issue. I support the president's decision to reverse the directive that was sent out by the last administration. I certainly, very much appreciate how difficult this topic is for everyone on both sides of the issue. I happen to have concern. I was a prosecutor for a year and a half, and one of my chief concerns with this is that if it went into effect, if it was a law that you can use whichever restroom aligns with what you say is your internal sense of gender, that a man can go into or a boy can go into a woman's bathroom or locker room, and if they're not supposed to be there, in order to prosecute them for being in the wrong bathroom, you would have to prove that their internal sense of gender is different than what they say it is. So my biggest just concern from a legal perspective is that component. Now, I don't support discrimination in any form, and it's important that those who are members of our LGBT community that we do what we can to help them and to prevent discrimination. I happen to support the president's decision to reverse President Obama's directive. Certainly very much respect those who may disagree with me or agree. It's not the easiest of topics, but that's my personal opinion. But thank you, Melody, for the question. And now we're bringing on Joe.
Yes, good evening.
Hi, Joe. Good evening.
How are you today?
For participating.
Thank you for the opportunity. I actually have two questions, and I hope I could get to both. The first is, as an American and as a Jew, how do you condone Donald Trump's belated condemnation of the rise of anti-Semitism that has been going on throughout his campaign and now through his presidency?
Well, thanks, Joe, for that question. And I have been critical of the statement that, first off, I would say the statement that went out on the Holocaust Memorial Remembrance Day that didn't mention Jews and the Holocaust, while millions of others were also murdered. And it's important that our statements reflect and honor and never forget the loss of millions of other people who weren't Jewish. I also believe it's very important to mention the fact that Adolf Hitler and the Nazis were trying to exterminate the entire Jewish religion and murdered several million Jews in that effort, and that should be part of the statement. And then moving forward, the bomb threats that have been taking place with targeting Jewish community centers, as well as the desecration that we're seeing of Jewish sites, whether it is a threat or an actual event of physical violence, we're trying to intimidate the Jewish population. It's something that deserves the strongest condemnation. That includes when the president was at the State of the Union address. When he was at his press conference. He is giving a speech next week, by the way, in front of a joint session of Congress. Last week, when he was at his press conference and was asked a question about it, it was almost like he was answering a different question. I was pleased that this week, a few days ago, he started to speak up more. I would strongly encourage him to do that. He is in a unique...
Does he have to be embarrassed to speak out on such an important issue? It's almost as if he's living in another world and couldn't care less as to what was going on around him. Why didn't he go visit the mosque down south after it was burnt down? That would have been showing a way to reach out to everyone in this country, not just his party or his 43% or just his group that he is speaking to.
Yeah, no, I certainly very much appreciate your sentiments, and it actually provides the president with a leadership opportunity where, morally, it's the right thing to do to speak out when there is intimidation, physical threats, violence, destruction of personal property, sacred personal property. Speaking out at those moments is a leadership opportunity, not only to connect with the people who support you, but many others who maybe didn't vote for you. So,
but he hasn't done that, and I don't think he's received enough quote-unquote condemnation from the Republicans who supposedly support him. Where are they? And why aren't they directing him? He's given a wink to the alt-right and their beliefs and has not cast them aside. Instead, he's welcomed them with Bannon into his close supporters and advisors. The two don't mix.
And I personally have been outspoken on this. I have put out statements. I've done interviews. I did an interview yesterday morning on CNN actually talking about these topics, consistent with what I'm telling you now during this call. I want our president to be successful. I want our country to be successful. And I think it's going to be very important for him over the course of these coming days, weeks, months, years ahead to be able to learn from some of these lessons from the early days of the administration to be the best possible leader. Joe, what was the second part of the question?
The second question was this. In your opening remarks, you expressed the opinion that you care about our clean water and our environment. And I want to know, did you vote to support Donald Trump's law or whatever it was to allow the coal companies to dump their stuff into the water to pollute the waters? Did you vote for that law?
Well, so the Congressional Review Act, there was a vote. I think I know which one you're referring to. It wasn't a bill from the administration. It was actually a bill from Congress, which is something that I did vote for. And it towards the end of the Obama administration, there were a number of regulations that were passed. The Congressional Review Act allows Congress to vote down these 11th hour, midnight rules that were rushed through before he had left office. I don't believe that the administration and the executive agencies should be passing rules that are eliminating an entire sector, an entire way of life for people who live in different states. You know, in our district, we're not relying on coal like those who live in West Virginia, say, not just for jobs and the economy, way of life. It's an energy that they rely on. I support an all-of-the-above energy approach. I want us to not only reduce our reliance on foreign oil, but to reduce our reliance on oil altogether, reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. Here on New York, we have a lot of inefficient, both economically and environmentally. We have these plants that they cost more. You take a plant like Caithness, for example, that is more economically and environmentally efficient than some of these older, more outdated plants that we have on the island. Also in the 1st Congressional District, we have Brookhaven National Lab, SUNY Stony Brook, doing a really great job pursuing their alternative energy research mission. I have been helping lead the fight to secure the ARPA-E funding to help with that alternative energy research mission. But with regards to the question and the vote, I did vote for it, and those are some of the reasons why a little bit earlier in my answer here, in that I don't believe that the executive branch should be both the executive branch and Congress. If there's a proposal like this that is going to be offered, it should be vetted out through Congress, passed if it's a good idea, not passed if it is flawed. But I really do appreciate your couple of questions and for participating tonight on the call. So thank you again for being involved, Joe. And throughout this call tonight, we have people who are asking questions online. So it's great for all of you participating online to be doing that, and I'm going to try my best to try to get to some of these questions that are coming in. And one from Tina asks, how will you make sure my lower middle class family will be able to afford health insurance, especially since my job doesn't provide me with health insurance? That's a great question, Tina. Thanks for participating online. For everyone, there's several hundred people who are listening in online right now, which is really cool. So with regards to healthcare right now, part of the ACA included a Medicaid expansion that New York State participated in. So the main focus right now with regards to efforts to repeal and replace the ACA hasn't as much been about those who are going to continue to be covered under Medicaid, the lower income people, but those who are making too much money to qualify for Medicaid. It's important that there is a smooth transition to a better future for the ACA. No one wants to pull the rug out from anyone who's currently covered. That is an important focus of mine. I've heard many of my colleagues talk about it as well. And for you, Tina, I don't know exactly how much you make, whether you're receiving coverage through Medicaid or if it's another health insurance plan. You did ask the question online. I would ask if you wouldn't mind reaching out to my office just so we could get a little more information as far as exactly what your situation is so that we can best answer it. I will say that as far as Medicaid expansion goes, if there was just an outright repeal, New York State would lose up to billions of dollars. So one of the things that the New York Republican congressional delegation has been working on as part of this repeal and replace effort is fighting for a baseline that is going to greatly mitigate the financial impact to New York State, the impact with regards to Medicaid costs, so that we don't have people who are currently receiving coverage in a position where they might lose their Medicaid coverage. I will offer up as well that for people who are currently receiving Medicaid in New York State, we spend a little over $1 billion a week on Medicaid. We have more expenses on Medicaid than Texas, Illinois, and Florida combined. Our population is less than the population of Florida, but our Medicaid costs are about the size of the entire state budget of Florida. So there are ways where, there are ways that individuals are literally making millions, tens of millions of dollars off the Medicaid system So we need to become more efficient as well so that we can be able to deliver the best possible care to those who need it most and not overburden the taxpayers. And New York State taxpayers are paying some of the highest individual and corporate marginal income tax rates in the entire country. So thank you. And our next caller is Nancy. Hello, Nancy. Do you have a question?
Yes, hi. Well, it's kind of following along the same lines as the other one. And it said that you are behind the repeal and replace of the Affordable Care Act, except for, of course, children under 26 and for people with pre-existing conditions. But what is the plan that you have in place to replace it, and how will you pay for it? Because I know you said you don't want to increase taxes, and I'm not sure that I'm really clear on how you would do it.
One of the ways to look at, and thanks for the question, one of the ways to look at the current situation with regards to the ACA, I kind of look at it in three different parts or buckets, chapters, I guess, depending on what your preference is. Number one is the budget reconciliation bill, which I would anticipate is going to be introduced here over the course of the next week or two. That's what I'm hopeful for. There is only so much that you can include. You can't repeal all of Obamacare, even if you wanted to, in the budget reconciliation bill, but you can repeal and replace a lot of it. For those interested in what the plan looks like, what's been getting vetted out behind the scenes has basically been Tom Price's repeal and replace legislation, where members of Congress are, over the course of the last few months, because it was a bill that was almost like a messaging bill when you had a Democratic president who wasn't going to sign off on a repeal of the ACA, obviously. But once November's election passed, especially when Tom Price got nominated for HHS, that bill kind of became a live bullet, you might say, and it started to get vetted out. Half of us in Congress, in the Republican conference, come from expansion states in Medicaid. Some come from non-Medicaid expansion states. So, 1/3 of the counties in the country only have one health insurance option under the exchange in our home counties. A lot of people have deductibles so high it feels like they don't have a health plan at all. So a lot of members, based off of where they're from, have been vetting out the Price plan and lobbying for certain changes to help advocate for our own constituents. And as I mentioned, for the New York Republican congressional delegation, there's been a heavy focus on greatly mitigating the impacts as it relates to Medicaid. So the budget reconciliation bill, I'm hoping, will be introduced in the next week or two. The second part is that there are...
Can I just stop for 1 second? So is that on a local basis you're saying that they will make changes, or is there a federal plan in place, or you're just working on it?
No, we're lobbying to so the Committee of Jurisdiction is the House Energy and Commerce Committee. So the New York Republican congressional delegation had a meeting last week with Greg Walden, who's the chair of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, where we were speaking about, with a New York focus on what the budget reconciliation and the plans beyond it should look like. And we're advocating in a very parochial way on behalf of New Yorkers and the New York State budget and just the impact on healthcare in our own state. So the second bucket is that the Secretary of Health and Human Services has certain powers to ensure that there's a smooth transition to that new reality for healthcare. Because we don't want to pull the rug out from anyone, it's going to be important for the Secretary of Health and Human Services to be working with states, to be working with insurers, providers, getting feedback from the ground so that this is implemented as smoothly and as effectively as possible. The third part of this, or you could say like the third bucket of the process, is that whatever else needs to get done legislatively that can't get done in budget reconciliation, or if there's a lesson that's being learned after the fact that we need to pass through statute. In that case, if it's not part of budget reconciliation, it still only requires 218 votes in the House, but requires 60 votes in the Senate, which means that it needs bipartisan support. So some of that might get done before, say the November 2018 elections. It's also possible that, some aspects of that third bucket might be debated and vetted out inside of Senate in states where there's competitive Senate districts, for example, as to which direction we should go on those bills. But I really do appreciate your question. And by the way, so we have calls tonight. We have poll questions tonight. If you have a question, dial *3 at any time, and we'll be able to bring you in queue. We have a ton of questions that we're going to try to get to. Just so you know, at the end of this call, if we didn't get to your question, you can leave a message, and we'll be able to call everyone back. So the first poll question of the night, which issues are most important to you? Press 0 for education. Press 1 for economy or jobs. Press 2 for foreign affairs or terrorism. Press 3 for taxes. Press 4 for infrastructure. Press 5 for immigration or border security. Press 6 for healthcare. Press 7 for veterans. Press 8 for the environment. And press 9 for spending or debt. Which issues are most important to you? Press 0 for education. Press 1 for the economy or jobs. Press 2 for foreign affairs. Press 3 for taxes. Press 4 for infrastructure. Press 5 for immigration or border security. Press 6 for healthcare. 7 for veterans. 8 for the environment. 9 for spending or debt. Again, anyone have any questions, dial *3 and we'll be able to bring you in. All right, going on to Regina. Hello, Regina. Regina. Okay, don't have Regina on the phone. All right, again, any questions, just dial *3 and we will be able to bring you on. And the next caller, Gerard. Hello, Gerard.
Hey, Congressman. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Very good. I've got more of a point than a question, but it'll blend into a question. I myself was not a President Trump backer from the beginning. There was a first and second choice. But since President Trump became my president and your president of this United States, I firmly believe over the last month or 6 weeks that, and I don't mean to get nasty, but the spineless Congress, vis-a-vis the Senate and the House, they took their jabs at this president. Now, if we can't get our own House and Senate in order to get our laws passed and get our issues passed, we're not going to be around after 4 years. In fact, we're going to probably after these next 2 years, if we don't get our House and Senate in order, we're going to catch a beating. We want to take over the Senate 60 plus to get anything we want passed. But between Senator McCain, I respect his service to this country, Senator Graham, a lot of congressmen, and I don't think you're one of them, sir. I didn't hear you say anything derogatory to our president. But these people want to put, when I say these people, these congressmen and these senators want to put their career first. And by the way, I believe term limits should be part of this institution instead of a career for most of these people to make, when they leave Senate or they leave Congress, they make a ton of money in the private sector. But my question to you, sir, is what do you think about whether it's the senators or these congressmen half-heartedly backing our president or slamming him in the press to make a name for themselves? Thank you, Congressman. I'll hang up and listen to you.
Well, thanks for the question and the comment. First off, I also support term limits. I co-sponsor a lot of different bills for term limits. I believe that our founding fathers, they wanted people to serve to bring their ideas, their perspective, to positively impact our country. You serve in the House or you serve in the Senate, and you move on to the next thing, but you're not supposed to be there for 40 years. So I co-sponsor a lot of different term limit bills. I would caution against people who are taking positions for the purpose of being able to get their name in print. It's important to be consistent with your fundamental beliefs and principles, and there have been times where there are many times where I disagreed with President Obama during my first term in Congress. He was my president. I didn't vote for him, but he was my president. Donald Trump, I did vote for. He is my president as well. And there are times where I have disagreed and I will disagree with our current president, and there are many times where I disagreed with the last president. But I can't really speak for everyone and what their motives or their mentality is when they say some of the things that they say. I do know I do have some colleagues who have taken certain positions that are inconsistent with what they actually believe, just because it might score a headline. And it's even worse when it's not the position that's in the best interests of our country, in my opinion. But it's an interesting point you have. I deeply respect Senator McCain for his service in uniform, and he's certainly a patriot for everything that he has experienced in his life. And it's up to the people of Arizona to decide who they want representing them in the United States Senate. We are able to elect our own United States senators here in our own state. And in Arizona, they choose to send Senator McCain back for another 6 years. I think it's important that we find common ground wherever possible so that we can get some important goals across the finish line. And that's working with anyone on both sides of the aisle. For me, I'm willing to work with absolutely anyone to move our country forward. I had meetings this week, set many meetings in my office with people who have been involved in protests since President Trump was inaugurated. I enjoyed meeting with them. I'm doing this teletown hall right now. Next Friday, I have mobile office hours. That's Friday, March 3rd, from 10 to 1 at the Hagerman Fire Department in East Patchogue, where people can walk in off the streets. And I just have one meeting after another. They're about 10, 15 minutes long, talking about whatever topics people want to talk about. And just like I've done these teletown halls for years, I've really enjoyed doing those mobile office hours as well. So there are many different ways to interact with constituents, and I'm always willing to pursue any opportunity for a productive, substantive dialogue like tonight, covering a whole bunch of issues that you all are passionate about. And so the second poll question is, do you approve of the job I am doing in Congress? Press 1 for yes, or press 2 for no, or press 3 for undecided. Do you approve of the job I am doing in Congress? Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no, press 3 for undecided. And while you all are answering, we'll bring our next caller on the line. Hello, Arlene?
Yes, that's me.
Hi, Arlene.
Hi.
Hi. Well, hey, thanks for participating tonight. What's your question?
I'm interested in Medicare. There's been talk about cuts in Medicare. Now, is that for the present people that are on Medicare, or people that, like my daughter, she's 58? Will there be cuts, or in the future? Has anybody even talked about this?
Well, there have been a lot of different Medicare bills that have been out there, and the goal is and should continue to be figuring out how to strengthen Medicare, to improve access to it, to improve services, to be able to strengthen it for those who are relying on it. Many people desperately relying on Medicare. We need to ensure that these accounts are solvent and that it's operating as efficiently as possible. We must preserve and protect Social Security and Medicare for everyone who are currently seniors, relying on it. They've paid into it. They need it, and we should be finding ways to strengthen it. But by no means should we be pursuing any policy that is going to weaken Medicare for those who are either retired or close to retirement. And there are aspects of Medicare that are working better than other aspects of Medicare. For example, the Medicare Advantage program. I get a lot of feedback in my office from people who love the Medicare Advantage program, and they want to see that actually increased, to be strengthened, to be used more than it is right now. Last Congress, the big thing that was done, passed, signed into law, was overhauling the sustainable growth rate. This was trillions of dollars of savings for our federal government. It prevented cuts to Medicare, increase in costs, reduction of scope of services. After 17 short-term patches, we overhauled the sustainable growth rate. So we have to find ways to strengthen it as much as possible. Those are a couple things that have been done or is being discussed right now, because for that future generation, for someone who's not even old enough to vote right now, or in their 20s or 30s, if we don't find ways to improve Medicare, if we don't tackle it and strengthen it, then there's no guarantee that it's going to be there for that younger generation, even though they're paying into it. So thank you, Arlene, for your question about Medicare. And again, anyone has any questions, just press *3 at any time, and we'll be able to bring you on to the line. So we'll go back to an online question, and Bruce asks, why do you support the REINS Act? For those of you who may not be familiar with the REINS Act, this is legislation that I do support and I voted for, and I understand that there's people on both sides of this particular issue. REINS stands for Regulations from the Executive in Need of Scrutiny Act. It was passed by the last Congress, it's going back through the process again in Congress right now, where when the executive creates any type of regulation and has an economic impact above $100 million, that it has to go to Congress for approval, and I support that. And there are some regulations, many very well intended, many are very well named, and like the fiduciary rule, for example, is one particular regulation that it sounds good, might be very well intentioned. A fiduciary should act in the best interest of their client. The practical impact of it, I ended up hearing from financial planners who are small mom and pop operations where you have someone not trying to save millions of dollars, trying to save $50 or $100 or $200,000 for retirement, and we were hearing from financial planners in local chambers of commerce saying that with the fiduciary rule going into effect, that they might not be able to stay in business. It was that serious the way it was going to actually get implemented. But there are a lot of different regulations that were created, that are being considered, and it's just important that we don't rush through something that might be well-intentioned that doesn't get properly vetted out. And I think that Congress should participate in that effort more. And that was with the last Congress, with the last president, and now we have a new president, different parties. It's still something that I strongly support. All right, so we'll go back to another question. And Meredith? Hello, Meredith?
Hi, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thanks for participating.
Thank you. I'm calling to discuss your co-sponsorship of H.R. 38.
Okay.
As I understand it, this bill basically proposes to totally undermine the state's laws and safety by forcing all states to accept concealed carry with no permit, which is the standard in several other states. So So under this law, individuals in New York who, for safety or other reasons, can't obtain a concealed carry permit under our laws would suddenly be able to carry a weapon without a permit wherever they want. They can, according to this bill, they can walk into a school, they walk into a public park, they can go into other public buildings. And I'm just curious how this is possibly something you could support.
Well, I would say a couple of important things on this. One is this legislation is reciprocity between states that honor concealed carry. We have, in New York State, we have different laws. We have much stricter gun laws in New York than you'll see in many other states around the country. I'm sure that this call is filled up with people who are for stricter laws and others who might have a different view of our Second Amendment and what might be the best policy. I do co-sponsor the concealed carry reciprocity legislation. I do support it. I would like to see the legislation passed. In states, like for example, New York State, I didn't vote for the SAFE Act when it was brought up for a vote in January of 2013, and I had serious issues with the way that it was written. Case law in the D.C. versus Heller case, for example, said that you can't ban forms of firearms that are commonly used by law-abiding citizens, entire classification of firearms. That was the wording that the Supreme Court used. And the SAFE Act took rifles, for example, and just because it looks scary, because it has a single feature added to it, they were banning it and calling it an assault rifle just because it looks scary. Just because you take a rifle and you add a flash suppressor or a muzzle compressor or a collapsible buttstock or a thumb grip or a pistol grip, that doesn't mean that just because it has that feature that all of a sudden it should be made illegal because of that. So I strongly support our Second Amendment. There are people on this call who probably care deeply about background checks. Just about everyone on this call, I would imagine, cares deeply about background checks. There was a year where the Department of Justice, they came out with a stat where over 80,000 attempted illegal purchases of firearms were made, and the Department of Justice prosecuted 44 of them. Over 80,000 cases where the system worked in catching people attempting to make an illegal purchase of a firearm, yet the Department of Justice only prosecuted 44 of those cases. We have a lot of background check laws that are currently on the books right now that we aren't enforcing. So it's not just about creating a new law that might feel good or might sound good. It's just look at what we're doing right now with the laws that are currently on the books that we're not enforcing. So, there's a lot to talk about the Second Amendment. I'm going to be candid in my answers to it. I'm never going to try to be all things to all people. Mayor Koch once said that if you agree with me 9 times out of 12, vote for me. If you agree with me 12 times out of 12, see a psychiatrist. And it's something that I take to heart a lot every single day. But I do support our Second Amendment. I do support the concealed carry legislation. But I very much appreciate you bringing it up on this call. Now we're going to go to the third question of the night, and it's, do you approve of the job that President Trump is doing? Do you approve of the job President Trump is doing? Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no, press 3 for undecided. Do you approve of the job that President Trump is doing? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for undecided. And remember, anyone has any questions, just dial *3. If we don't get to your question, we'll do our best to respond to absolutely everyone. After this call, you'll have an opportunity to leave a message, and we'll be able to bring you on and get back to everybody. Hello, Cynthia? Hello, Cynthia? I think I heard you.
Sorry, the mute button turned itself back on.
Okay.
I got a response from you about a question I'd sent about conflicts of interest that President Trump has. And in it you said that regardless of who occupies the White House, the integrity of the presidency must be preserved. In the rest of your letter, you misrepresented what President Trump has done to take care of his conflicts of interest, saying he had given all control to his sons, which already is not divesting, and still, but actually he did it in a way where it can be reversed in any time. And we don't even know what his conflicts are in terms of international stuff and the emollients clause. Would you support a bill that would require the president, all presidents, to release their taxes and divest and put any of their assets in blind trusts?
Well, thanks for the question, Cynthia. And there have been actually a few votes already where these have been at committee level, where in every single committee, the Democrats are introducing these conflict of interest and taxes proposals for committee rules and whatnot. And it's been hyper partisan. The people who are introducing these proposals didn't introduce it when it existed on the with the last administration. They want to know if anyone testifies before a committee hearing, anyone that they are releasing all these different details in order just to testify. It's certainly helpful and important to know whenever there might be any type of issue with a candidate or someone who is elected with regards to business ties and any particular potential conflicts of interest. We have an Oversight and Government Reform Committee in Congress that conducted a lot of oversight of the last administration, and I'm confident we'll have oversight over the current administration. But I'll just tell you that for those who are pushing these proposals right now, some of whom they can't wait to try to impeach the president. Those motives are pretty clear, and there are folks in Congress right now who don't want the president to succeed, and right out of the gate. And there were people who, as the president was on his inaugural parade from the Capitol to the White House, the sides of the streets were lined up with signs that said "Impeach him now." And the guy just got sworn in, and people were calling for his impeachment. So those who are pushing this particular proposal that you mentioned in Congress are the type of people who they are predicting they want to impeach the president, and that's just not something that I relate to. I would encourage whenever there is a conflict of interest, there's something needs to be investigated, that Congress, utilizing its oversight function, they have a committee of jurisdiction for that, anything like that is investigated as necessary, just like we saw with the last administration. The same thing should be done with the current administration. But I definitely very much appreciate your question tonight, and again, for everyone who is participating online as well, thank you. A lot of people listening online, some hundreds of people. And we're going to go to the fourth poll question of the night. And after the call, we'll be able to share some of these responses. But I'm going to load up this fourth question. Do you believe our country is on the right track or wrong track? Press 1 for right track, press 2 for wrong track. Do you believe our country is on the right track or wrong track? Press 1 for right track or press 2 for wrong track. And we're bringing on Jacqueline. Hello, Jacqueline.
Hi, Congressman.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I had a question on the Affordable Care Act. Pretty much I was looking on your website regarding the Reconciliation Act. I guess you had talked a little bit about it, and its attempt to repeal, the Affordable Care Act. But when I looked at exactly what or anybody was repealing, Congress was repealing, the only thing it said was it wanted to repeal the mandate and taxes. Pretty much the impression I got is that everything else would remain. My question is, without the mandate, how are we going to ensure that healthy people will sign up for health insurance and not just wait until they get sick and then try to get health insurance?
Well, thanks for the question, Jacqueline. And actually, right now we have an issue with a lot less people signing up, healthy people signing up than what was predicted. The budget reconciliation, as far as the repeal goes, and again, I would anticipate the draft to be released here in the coming week or two. I sure hope the language itself is going to, from everything that I know, is going to include a repeal of a lot of these taxes and fees. There are a lot of different proposals. First off, we should continue to cover people with pre-existing conditions. We should allow children to continue to stay on their parents' policy. We should provide more access. As I mentioned earlier in the call, a third of the counties in our country they only have one option under the exchange. In New York State, we created Health Republic of New York, and we had the New York State picked the Freelancers Union to run Health Republic of New York, where they should have done a nationwide search to identify someone capable of actually creating a healthcare plan. Freelancers Union didn't know how to create a healthcare plan, so they rented one. And because they didn't know how to sell it, they marked it down, and they were selling it for less than they were renting it, which is a business model guaranteed to fail. And then when they went to New York State asking for permission to raise their rates, New York said to make it work. So in November of 2015, they went under. Over 200,000 New Yorkers out of nowhere, some undergoing cancer treatment, lost their care very quickly, and that's just not the way to go. We need more options. We need small and medium-sized businesses to have a better ability to pool their policies. We need to allow people to look at markets in other states to find policies that work better for their family. We also need more local providers, obviously honoring those policies that are out of state. New York State, for example, look at options for managed long-term care. The medallions in New York State were only being given to not-for-profits, where there are for-profits who should be able to compete to try to deliver that same service at same or better quality at the same or less cost. And in New York State, these not-for-profits receiving these medallions were targeting. There's New York Times stories about this, targeting healthy people to sign up, where they're receiving the benefit and they're saving money. They're targeting people who would never need to utilize the service because they're riding their bike to the senior center, they're playing ping pong. There also needs to be more of an ability to save money pre-tax. As I mentioned earlier in the call, when someone has a deductible that costs $8,000, it almost feels like you don't even have insurance at all, even though you do, you really don't. If you can't afford your insurance, then you really don't have access to it. So that is important as well. Making Medicaid operate more efficiently is important. It's also important to have a smooth transition, as I mentioned earlier, so that we're not pulling the rug out from anyone. As far as healthy people goes, it was an issue before the ACA. Under the current law, it'll be a concern in the future because people who are healthy think that they could just save their money, and that can come back and hurt you big time if you get sick, you need services, and you can't afford it. So thank you for your question, and now we're going to get to our fifth poll question of the night. I'm going to bring it up here. Well, I guess it's a perfect segue because the question is about the ACA. What do you believe should be done with the Affordable Care Act, Other people refer to it as Obamacare. Some refer to it as the Affordable Care Act. Press 1 for repeal and replace. Press 2 for improve. Press 3 for keeping it as it is. What should be done with Obamacare? Press 1 for repeal and replace. Press 2 for improve. Press 3 for keeping it as it is. Anyone has any questions, you can press star 3 to come into the queue. And we're trying our best to get to everyone. If we don't get to your questions, you'll be able to leave a message at the end of this call, and we'll get back to everyone after the call. And now we're bringing Ashley online. Hello, Ashley.
Hi, Congressman. Thank you so much for taking my question. I saw through your website that you're on the Bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus. Climate change is my top concern, and I'm wondering what direction you hope that the caucus might go in.
Well, thanks for your question, Ashley. I belong to the Bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus, and as I mentioned earlier in this call, I don't care if you're the most liberal Democrat or the most conservative Republican, especially if you come from an area like Long Island where we're almost completely surrounded by water. It's not just the water around us, but the water underneath us. We all want clean air and clean water. And what I want to see the caucus successfully be able to focus on are solutions, bipartisan solutions that where a conservative representative who, regardless of what their opinion is on the climate change debate, whatever their answer is with regards to what's caused by human activity and what's not, that they feel comfortable and confident in supporting, regardless of their positions in that political debate, that they are supporting solutions that are going to provide for more clean air and clean water. And it's been such a highly charged political debate for so many years that sometimes the debate itself is preventing a healthy dialogue, a healthy substantive dialogue on what the most productive way is to pursue solutions at any level of government, or within the private sector, or as individuals. Some of this stuff a particular level of government can legislate. Others, it's about a business pursuing best practices. It's an individual in their home with best practices. I mean, the advice of, if you care about stormwater runoff, what you can do at your home to control the water that might be hitting your roof, that might end up in your soil, it might end up on your street, going down to your local stream, and along the way it might be picking up fertilizer, whatever might be on the asphalt. It's contaminating our local water supply. We have issues around our area with nitrogen loading, without harmful algae blooms. I support the Peconic Estuary Program, which was funded last year, and I support continuing that. We have 2 estuaries just in our own district, even though there are just over a couple dozen in the entire country. 2, Peconic Estuary and the Long Island Sound, are both in the 1st Congressional District. I also supported reauthorize the Land and Water Conservation Fund in the 114th Congress after the 113th let it expire. I'm co-chair of the Long Island Sound Caucus, which is a bipartisan caucus. Rosa DeLaura is the other chair from the other side of the Sound. I'd like to see the Long Island Sound Restoration and Stewardship Act passed and signed into law to help with the cleanup efforts of the Sound. That's something that I support, and I've spoken to Bill Schuster, who's the chairman of the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee, on ways to get that done, to help that pursuit of clean air and clean water. So I want to really be able to try to get past a partisan political debate and pursue solutions that can allow us to achieve those goals. So thank you for the question, Ashley, tonight, and we'll get to our last poll question of the night. And this is actually a question related to our email newsletters. We send email monthly newsletters at the end of the month. Actually, we'll be sending one here in a few days at the end of February. At the end of every month, we do this. If you want to subscribe to my e-newsletter, press 1. And if you press 1, then we can be able to add you to our monthly e-newsletter. So if you would like to subscribe to our e-newsletter, just press 1 and we'll get you all signed up. And we're going to bring Rachel on the line. Rachel?
Hi, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing well.
Good. I have a bit of a complex question for you, actually. My brother served in Iraq. He did 2 tours, and he was injured. With the whole VA situation, I know that it needs to be revamped majorly nationwide. However, here with Northport, it's terrible. And he has been dealing with a shoulder problem for years and years and years. And he had multiple scans, 2010, 2011, 2014. One, they told him everything was fine. And we finally got copies of all of his scans. And they actually marked him down. One of his scans in 2011 said that he was a 28-year-old female, which he's not. And it showed everything wrong with his shoulder, but they told him that he was fine. So he finally just gave up because there was just no getting any help. But he had to go to a private doctor to get this taken care of just recently. I actually had tagged you in a Facebook post regarding it. And he did have the surgery, but now he's got over $50,000 worth of medical bills. And I know everybody's worried about their whole Obamacare, but I'm worried about our veterans because they're not being treated properly. And I see it firsthand every single day. And now, on top of it, the VA has just garnished his wages. And he's got 2 little girls, and he doesn't know what to do. So what can we do to help stop this? Because this is going on for far too long. And that's basically kind of my complex question.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you to your brother for his service to our country. What branch was he in?
He was in the Army.
Okay. Well, great. I'm a little biased towards the Army. Still serve in the reserves.
Well, thank you for your service as well.
Well, it is, and thank you to your entire family, because when one person serves, their entire family serves, and I would imagine, especially when your brother was in Iraq, the whole family. It was probably even tougher to be here, knowing that he was there, than for him, being there. So I experienced that in many ways with those around me, especially during my time in Fort Bragg, where people were deploying and from another unit, and you see their family members trying to work their way through it. So in our office, we have 3 people who are focused on veterans issues, 1 from a policy standpoint, 2 from constituent services. Have you been in touch with my office yet?
I know that we have, my sister-in-law is kind of taking care of it all now, but I know that I've called before, and I know she's called before in the past when he actually went into cardiac arrest at one point, and he had to get rushed by ambulance, obviously. His landlord had found him unresponsive, and they rushed him by ambulance to the nearest hospital, which was Brookhaven. And he was in there for a while, and then he went to the VA because he had these hefty bills, and they told him, too bad, you should have came here. And he said, well, I couldn't come to Northport. I had to go by ambulance. I was in heart failure, and they just wouldn't do anything to help him. So I know that they've been in contact with your office in the past, and I think that was resolved.
Okay.
If not mistaken.
Well, that's good. So I have in my DC office, the gentleman's name is Matthew Scott. He handles Veterans Affairs work from a policy standpoint, legislation oversight. In my Patchogue office, we have 2 people full-time, Marissa DeLuca and Cleveland Johnson. And our number in our Patchogue office to reach Cleveland or Marissa is 631-289-1097. That's the main district office in Patchogue. Our DC office, where Matt Scott is, 202-225-3826. There's a lot that we have been working on since day one on different veterans issues. We love our veterans, and it's important for our veterans to be treated with the love, dignity, and respect that they deserve. after risking their lives on the battlefield in defense of our freedoms and liberties. And we have a new Secretary of Veterans Affairs. The good news is I'm very confident that he knows what's wrong at the VA. What I'm unsure of at this point is what he's going to do about it. I had a conference call with him about the Northport VA specifically. It was a 30-minute conference call where at the end of the conference call, I was mid-sentence in the middle of asking a question, making a point, and the phone line just goes dead. They actually set it where at the 30-minute mark, the line just goes dead. And then we have to send a letter and go chasing to try to finish a sentence. And they weren't just popping back on the call to finish the conference call. So, I've had experiences like that, specifically about Northport VA. The entire department needs to improve management, the culture. Some laws have to get changed. Poor performing personnel. There's so many veterans so many people who work at the VA who are great. They're in it for all the right reasons. There are a lot of people who live on Long Island who are really happy with the care that they get at the Northport VA. And then there are others who see some really important, great opportunities to improve the standard of care. We can improve the way in which the capital construction budget is spent at the VA, where the Denver VA hospital project was it's $1 billion over budget.
Right.
So I could go on at length there, and the appeals and the claims process. So I just really hope that Secretary Shulkin, now that he's the secretary, actually tackles all of these programs. But for anyone listening on this call, anyone you know, whether you are a veteran, you know someone who's a veteran, you have a veteran issue that we could possibly help with, whether it's policy or constituent services, to reach out to us. And I'm glad that we were able to resolve the one issue with your brother, but if there's anything else that we can help with, please don't hesitate to reach out, Rebecca.
Can I just ask one other quick follow-up to that? Would you support, and I know a lot of people are against private health care and, whatever with veterans, but would you support our veterans being able to go anywhere that they could at no cost to get the health care if they cannot get to the VA? Because it seems to be always up for debate when it comes to veterans health care, but everybody is very concerned about their own and don't stop to think about those who gave all or a lot to serve for their rights. And I think that maybe our veterans should be able to go anywhere and get the best care for them instead of being stuck going to a VA that might not do something for them that they need.
Yeah, I support that 100%. I believe that a veteran should be able to take their veterans benefit to any provider they wish. And if you are a veteran who lives at the end of the North Fork or the end of the South Fork, it's like a full day to go to Northport VA and back. And many times for routine services, there are stories I hear from colleagues from other parts of the country where their constituents have to drive 4 hours to get to the closest VA hospital. It makes so much sense to allow that veteran to take their veteran benefit to a provider of their choice. So I strongly support that idea. I would love to see that get done.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thanks for participating, Rachel, for your question, and thanks again for your family service.
Thank you.
All right. For everyone, we're past. Originally, we were planning on doing this from 7 to 8. I see that we're at 8:15. But I want to give some contact information for anyone who wants to reach my office. Again, next week, mobile office hours, Friday, March 3rd from 10 to 1, Hagerman Fire Department, which is located at 510 Oakland Avenue, East Patchogue, New York. So that's mobile office hours where you can come. You can meet with me or a member of my staff. We'll try to do our best to get to everyone during that time frame, which has worked out in the past, but we'll love to see you next Friday. We do these mobile office hours a lot. I've done a whole bunch through the years, including many in my first term. And we do them at different days of the week, different times. I am willing to meet with absolutely anyone. So if you can't make it from 10 to 1 at the Hagerman Fire Department for some reason, just reach out to my office, please. and would love to figure out some other way to work through your particular issue. So here's contact info. Our Washington, D.C., the address is 1517 Longworth House Office Building. The zip code 20515. Phone number, I mentioned just a little while ago, 202-225-3826. 202-225-3826. My main district office, 31 Oak Street, Suite 20 in Patchogue. The zip is 11772. The phone number is 631-289-1097. My East End office is 30 West Main Street, Suite 201 in Riverhead. The zip is 11901. The phone number in Riverhead is 631-209-4235. You can visit my website at zeldin.house.gov. You can contact, that's zeldin.house.gov. You can contact my office through email by visiting zeldin.house.gov/contact/email. zeldin.house.gov/contact/email if you want to send us an email. You can visit my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Rep Lee Zeldin, REPLEEZELDIN. Facebook.com/Rep Lee Zeldin. You can follow me on Twitter at Rep Lee Zeldin, or you can follow me on Instagram. And you can search for me there, Rep Lee Zeldin, REPLEEZELDIN. I really do thank you all for participating. I encourage all of you to stay on the line to leave a message. And at the end of the call, everyone can leave a message, and we'll do our best to get in touch with everyone. We got to a lot of great questions from many different angles and perspectives. Certainly a lot more to talk about. I encourage you to stay in contact. For me, I probably get the most out of these calls, just hearing from you, your questions, your concerns. So thank you. Thank you all for participating, and have a really great night. And thank you for what is an honor and privilege to be able to represent the greatest congressional district in America, the 1st Congressional District of New York. Have a good night.